My fiance, Mark, and I were picking out rings at the local jewelry shop. He had just proposed to me last night, and we decided to screw tradition and pick out a ring together. I was in love with a beautiful one with a teardrop diamond. "It's yours, babe," Mark kissed the top of my head. Mark and I met at the dinner party of a mutual friend. I was immediately drawn to the tall man with the golden blonde hair and strong physique. His eyes were a stormy grey, his voice deep and calming. He flashed me his charming half smile, and just like that, I was his. I had misgivings about being with a widower, and one with 4 kids, no less. His oldest, Stella, was 15 years old. Then it was Leah, 13, and twins Victor and Olive, 6. All such darlings. So well behaved. Mark told me his wife had committed suicide 3 years ago, on the eve of their 10th anniversary. She had been depressed for quite some time, and he came home one day to find her lifeless body dangling from the ceiling. He said he was really messed up for a long time after, but had to stay strong for his children. All of my misgivings disappeared when I saw how devoted he was to them. He was a good man, I had decided. A good and strong man. A lot of my friends thought I was crazy for wanting to be a stepmother to 4 kids, at only 25 years old. But what can I say? I love children, always have. And Mark's babies are just so sweet and mature for their ages. You can tell they were brought up well. You could do a lot worse as far as stepchildren went. And of course, I love Mark. Despite our 11-year age difference, we surprisingly had a lot in common. We both liked the same TV shows. We both had a weird, morbid sense of humor. But most importantly, we both put family above everything else. We only dated for 8 months before he proposed. "He's only marrying you so you can take care of his kids," my mother warned me. But I didn't listen to her. Even if he was, I didn't mind. The only problem was, the eldest daughter, Stella, was a bit reserved around me. She was polite and well behaved, but she never talked to me if she didn't have to. I wanted so much for her to like me, but I understood her misgivings. After all, she was only 12 when her mother passed away. I imagined how heartbroken she must have been. Still, she took the news of our engagement very well. She gave me a courteous little hug and said, "Congratulations," in a very proper, formal tone. I wished she had been more genuine, but what could I do? The next day was Sunday. Mark went golfing every Sunday, rain or shine. In the winters, he went to an indoor golf dome. He wanted me to go with him, but I absolutely hated golf. To me, it was the opposite of what a sport should be. "Suit yourself," he shrugged. In the afternoon, I realized Mark had left his lunch in the fridge. I called him, but there was no answer. So, I decided to drive down to the golf course and deliver lunch to him. When I got there, there was no sign of him. The lady at the front counter said there was nobody by the name of Mark playing today. I went home, a million thoughts racing through my head. Was he cheating on me? Why would he lie about going to golf? Has he been lying to me all this time? When he came home that afternoon, I didn't say anything. I pretended everything was all right. "How was golf?" I asked. "Fine," he replied, "finished 3 under par. Something was up, and I needed to get to the bottom of it." Mark told me he'd be going away to a golfing getaway next week with his groomsmen. They'd be gone for the weekend, he told me. I was hesitant to believe him but didn't show it. I said I'll stay to take care of the kids. That morning, I called my sister and asked if she could babysit the kids for me. I dropped them off at her house, and I then asked to borrow her car, on the pretense that my lights were broken. She agreed. I drove back home, and parked a few houses away and waited for Mark to leave. At around 10 a.m., he started to drive off. I let a few cars come between us before following him. He was driving in the opposite direction of where the golf course was. With a sinking heart, I realized that he had been lying to me. He got off the highway and started driving down a small country lane. Then, he turned onto an even smaller cedar road and drove for 15 minutes before stopping near a small cottage, tucked neatly in the middle of the woods. I parked behind a large tree and watched as he got out of the car, opened the trunk, and carried out what looked like a month's worth of groceries. Fruits, vegetables, huge family-sized packs of ramen, even a large box of tampons. He deposited it on the porch of the cottage. Then, he went back to the car and pulled out a bouquet of red roses. My heart dropped. He pulled out a set of keys with his other hand and unlocked the cottage door. He carried everything inside and looked around before closing the door. My heart pounded. He was definitely meeting a woman in there. I didn't see another car, though, so how did she get there? My head was swimming with questions. Still, I waited a good 10 minutes before getting out of the car and walking up to the cabin. The windows were all boarded up, and the driveway was filled with weeds. A strange choice for a romantic rendezvous. I walked around to the back and crouched down beneath a boarded-up window. I heard a woman's voice, faint and quiet. Then I heard a louder one, which I recognized as Mark's. I couldn't hear what they were saying, though. Suddenly, the door slammed, and I heard Mark's keys jangling as he locked the front door. He had been there for less than 15 minutes. When I was sure that he was gone, I peeked through a crack in the window board. I could make out the profile of the dark-haired woman. Just as her head turned towards me, I ducked down. "Anybody there?" she called out. Her voice sounded gravelly and hoarse, like that of an old lady, except she looked so young. I ran. I ran until I reached my car. I drove like a maniac the rest of the way back, a million thoughts running through my mind. Why did that woman look familiar? When I got back to my sister's house to pick up the kids, she looked at me with concern. "Are you okay?" She raised an eyebrow. "You look like you just saw a ghost." "I'm fine," I lied. "Wedding planning stress." Back home, Mark texted me a picture of a golf course, along with the text, "Beautiful day on the green." Disgusted by his lies, I shoved my phone under my pillow and tried my best to sleep. I had a bad night. I dreamt of that pale, dark-haired woman calling out to me in her weary voice. When morning came, I was able to forget about what I had seen. I was busy getting the children ready to go to church. There was breakfast to be made, dresses and ties to be put on, and verses to be memorized. The busyness of the day dispelled my troubled thoughts, and I had a much better sleep that night. Mark texted me before bed, saying his buddies wanted to stay for a few more days at the golf resort. I replied tersely with a simple okay. On Monday morning, I heard a faint knock on my door. Stella stood there, hairbrush in hand. "Can you help me braid my hair?" she asked shyly. "All the girls at school are wearing their hair in this new style, and I don't know how to do it." "Of course, dear," I smiled. I was so glad that Stella was finally opening up to me. I led her to my vanity table and told her to sit. She shook out her hair, her dark chestnut tresses flowing down her back. "You have beautiful hair," I told her. "Thanks," she grinned. "Mum used to brush it for me every night when I was little." Stella turned her head slightly towards me, and a ray of morning light shone across her features. My smile froze. I knew why the dark-haired woman looked so familiar.